Showtime! Oh, it actually went live. Hello, and welcome to this, I guess, second episode of this series of Why Something Fails. And today we're talking all about intelligent design. With me is it's the A-team, pretty much, when it comes to intelligent design. Perfect. On which wonderful note, Nick has decided to get us underway. So, Nick, are you ready now? Oh, perfect. That was very keen.
Having seen this invitation, I've prepared several slides just off the top of my head, what I've learned recently, what I've been thinking about, and I would like to share these things as the starting point of discussion with you. And I hope some guys from the opposite side of the fence will join us to try to address some points, and maybe they will refute my arguments altogether. I hope that very much, because I'm open to the discussion. And I several things in my previous videos, and I will elaborate on them in this presentation. So I have several points why I think intelligent design does not hold a standard of theory or science or anything close to that. If you look around, if you are very careful in what you're seeing, you will see countless examples. I mentioned several of them here on this slide. First of all, the guys from this design group claim that there is very, very complex life around us, and it must be designed. But we have examples of the stupid designs, which would never be done by any sane designer or engineer. The first thing is, for example, the eyes of mammals and eyes of humans. To be able to see anything, we have to have an organ with photoreceptive cells, and our organ are obviously quite complex, are very strange in terms of design. We have retina, this internal side of our eyes, and the photoreceptive cells turn out to be on the opposite side. We have in the front side, we have veins, we have nerves, which blur the images, and our minds, our brains have to reconstruct the image. And moreover, because these nerves are in such a strange place, they have to go away from the eye, and we have a blind spot where these nerves clung together and go away to be connected to our brain, which is obviously a stupid design. And this the octopus, for example, doesn't have this. He has very similar eye to ours, and the nerve happened to be on the other side. It cannot be explained by intelligent design, especially if you think that the people are the culmination of the design, that we are the end point of the design efforts. Let's switch to other organs also by guys. I mean, human beings, human males have very strange looking genitals, and we have testicles hanging out in bags, which cause a lot of troubles for us. And inside, they turn out to have these weirdly curved tubes, which produce a lot of troubles for men in terms of health. A lot of diseases are caused by that, and a sane designer wouldn't do things like that. We have this laryngeal nerve, which goes from ears to our brain, and this nerve doesn't go straight to the brain. It happens to go through almost our heart, and it's also a very stupid kind of design, and especially in animals like giraffes, where the neck is several meters long. It can be perfectly explained by evolution. If we see the previous forms, if we see the fish, the nerve happens to be on the wrong side of artery, or on the wrong side veins, and if you have a design, you can design from scratch, you get the nerve going straight. But if it's evolution, if the neck is going longer and longer from generation to generation and thousands of generations, then you have no other way but just to waste the resources on the nerve and go further and further. The same goes with human back, lower back, which is poorly adapted to vertical locomotion. The same goes with the human sinuses, which also are adapted to horizontal locomotion, not vertical, and they didn't have time in recent hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years to adapt. This is why we have stuffed nose and sinus infections so often. You can look this up in more details if you want, and other guys can explain that more in more details. Second thing, if we look around, we see wasteful things in terms of resources. Animals build up muscles, they build up quickness, they build up hiding capacity, they build up a lot of resources just to stay alive. And something that is called, very neatly called, arms race in the animal kingdom. The gazelles, the antelopes, try to run faster and faster and faster just to stay alive. They demonstrate their vigor and by jumping and running. And cheetahs and leopards also try to match their speed by also developing muscles. And these things are actually waste of resources. These organisms could have more children, they could live longer, they could invest in other useful stuff, not in just developing useless muscles. And if you look in the plant kingdom, it's the same. Trees grow huge trunks, and it's also a waste of resources. The only thing why they do this is just to stay alive and just to outgrow their own peers to death, to get to the sun. The most efficient way to grow is to be a grass. Then you cover the ground and you get as much sunlight as you can, and you have as much a chance to survive as the trees. And the same thing goes with seeds. All the organisms, the plants, the animals, produce a lot of seeds. Majority of the seeds are wasted. That make life form development dead by the time they're young. The vast majority of youngsters in plants, in animals, are eaten, are outgrown, are killed. No sane designer, to my mind, would do something like that. And even if you allow any species to make the young and bring them to the adulthood, this species would cover the whole earth in several generations. It's the same for even elephants, very long time and slowly growing animals. They will cover the earth in several thousands of years or something. In short, the whole world is the world of pain. It's a very, very wasteful place. And I even didn't touch things like bacteria, things like parasites, which make our lives miserable. Next, the idea is not a theory, it's not a science, because I haven't found any testable predictions, any predictions at all. They just doubt the current knowledge that we have, and they say, okay, we don't have this knowledge, this is why it has probably been designed by someone. But this so-called theory poses more questions than it answers. It fails to answer a single one, but it poses very interesting questions like, okay, who is designer? How this complex being can exist? If it's not in the physical world, how can it be outside and interact with the physical world? How it can influence our lives and stuff like that? And it's, well, all the people I have talked to who are religious accept the notion that God must be extremely, extremely complex being, more complex than the universe that it's trying to explain. And nobody answers that question, including the intelligent design people. So can it be a science if they don't have even a conjecture? And stating that this being has always been is not an answer. It's not a science, as far as I can see it. And the only pseudoscientific point that they make is that we have this complexity. We have everything is so complex. It couldn't come up by chance. This shows that they don't understand. They don't understand very simple things like, for example, you can give a simple formula which creates an infinitely complex set in mathematics. You can create a very simple set of rules by which nature interacts and works and evolves into very complex structures. If we take any example that they take, these arguments have been refuted many times. We have computer models that explain how cells divide, how biology works, how genes express themselves. These computer models work more and more in elaborate ways. They even create stuff similar in computer memory, similar to very simple organisms or very simple microbiotic life. And if we take, for example, we see a lot of intermediate forms from very, very basic light detecting cells to very, very complex eyes with lenses, with intermediate forms like deepenings with the narrow holes to see the light. We have a lot of examples of intermediate forms and eyes evolved in different life forms in parallel. These things refute the argument about irreducible complexity. And there is a peculiar little organism, a microscopic organism called flagellum, and it has a little motor inside. It has a spinning wheel. It's a very interesting example, and the creationists grabbed it, embraced it, and said, okay, this couldn't happen. But actually you can Google it, there are open source papers which explain similar organisms with very similar proteins working in a similar way, and they explain the step that could lead to this flagellar motor with a real wheel spinning inside a living organism. So I would really like to see any arguments that can refute these things, that can give legitimate examples. And I would really like to continue with the discussion, and thank you for your attention.
Excellent. That pretty much is a perfect introduction. Thank you very much for that, Nick. I guess as we haven't got any ID proponents here, I'll play devil's advocate. Let's go back to the first thing you said, or one of the first things, of crap design. I'll be an ID proponent. Just because it's not optimal design, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not designed. How would anyone respond to that?
Well, I can try to respond.
By all means.
Yeah, I was interrupted when I introduced myself because I could hear our stream running, and I switched it off. So I'm a software engineer. I know how things are designed, and you can start with something simple. And okay, the intelligent design people might say God started with simpler forms and he designed more and more complex forms. And it would create a prediction. We would say, okay, the simpler forms have errors, have stuff like that, and God didn't want to come back to them and fix the things. But we have the most complex and the best organism, which is presumably human, which doesn't have any flaws, right? But I especially chose the design flaws in our human organisms, and the examples of other forms which are lesser forms from our perspective, but they are designed much better, and we can have countless forms that are designed to survive and to live much better than humans. And these things are pretty random, pretty what you would expect from random forest of trees, of life forms growing into different directions. So I guess I can imagine how intelligent design could create predictions, but it doesn't. And it's like what we see is explained by evolving life, not by designed life. And the best argument for me was any bad things could be fixed if you're a designer, if you're almighty and stuff like that. So I guess we wouldn't see these crappy things.
Only thing I would want to step in, also playing devil's advocate, the easiest way I could think a way to explain away design flaws was that this hypothetically is a time of trial. So that would be the easiest way I could come up with.
Yeah, but do you agree that in this way, like the best organisms, the culmination of design would have no flaws, right? But we have no organisms
well,
like that.
I would actually then I would want the word best better defined, because did you happen to see Concordance's video where he used AIDS as an example?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay, well, one of the things he brought up is that AIDS has an imperfect transcriptor for its own DNA, so it puts in a number of variations, and that number of variations is what allows it, at least some of the surviving AIDS descendants of the original infection, and to hold on against the treatments.
Okay, so are you advocating design, or are you advocating evolving organisms?
I'm playing a devil's advocate.
Yeah,
so,
but you have just come to explaining design by evolving, which is exactly, I understand how it works.
Yeah. So I'm just was saying that when like the word best was being used, I thought it needed more of a definition.
Yeah, but obviously the same people think that the best thing is human, right? Because we are the ultimate creatures created in God's image. So